Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Efosa Ojomo. I serve as co-president of the Africa Business Club here at HBS alongside Mayowa, who a lot of you have heard from already. We really want to welcome you to ABC today. I'm very excited about Fred's keynote coming up. Before I introduce Fred, I just want to say a couple of things about what inclusivity means to me. About 15 years ago, I got a scholarship to come study in the United States. As far as I was concerned, I had won the lottery. I wasn't going back to Nigeria. And, I felt lucky, and I felt that I would pursue that American dream. Now, perhaps a lot of you, that story resonates with you. But something happened to me in 2008. I was reading a book written by a professor at NYU. It's called The White Man's Burden. And in that book, I read about a 10-year-old girl from Ethiopia. Her name is Amarech. This 10-year-old girl had to wake up every day, every morning at 3 o'clock, fetch eucalyptus branches, trek miles to the city to sell so she could take care of her family. She was 10 years old. At that time, I thought about what I was doing at 10. And I'm sure you guys can think about what you were doing. I was in school. I was playing football with friends. I was doing algebra. And what happened was I realized that my story, that story, is atypical. That's the anomaly in Africa. And a majority of stories resemble that of Amarech, the 10-year-old girl. And I also realized that if I hadn't won that birth lottery and we played that game again, that I could have been that girl. And that was the night that I realized things had to change in my life. You see, nowhere in the world is it okay for a 10-year-old boy or girl to have that burden of fending for their families. They should be in school. They should be learning. And for me, I think that's why I'm really excited about introducing Fred Swaniker. Fred is dedicating his life to improving leadership and education on the continent. Now, a lot of you might not know this, but Fred and I actually have a lot in common. He's just a lot more accomplished than I am. And slightly better looking. But Fred, he also won the lottery and came to the U.S. and studied here. But he has since moved back and has co-founded the Africa Leadership Academy, which I'm sure most of you know. Since then, Fred has been recognized by the World Economic Forum, by Forbes. He's a TED Global Fellow, and even President Obama has recognized Fred. So, without further ado, I introduce to you this afternoon's keynote, Fred Swaniker.
Good afternoon. It's nice to see everybody, and this is a very difficult session because it's just after lunch, you know? And you know how Africans get after we eat lunch. So one thing I'm going to do is to try and make it more of a conversation. I'm going to be asking you some questions, and not the other way around. So look out for it. Start putting your thinking hats on, because I'm going to be giving you a chance to answer some of the questions that I'm going to be asking you. But before I do that, I thought I would just give you a little bit of background about who I am and what I'm passionate about. I was born in Ghana, but I left Ghana at the age of 4. And every 4 years of my life, I moved to a different country on the continent. So I moved to Gambia initially, and then to Botswana, and then to Zimbabwe. Eventually I worked in South Africa and so forth. And one of the things that all these experiences of living in different parts of Africa did is that it made me very passionate about Africa. And you can't go around the continent and not fall in love with it, right? It's truly beautiful. There's so much potential that we have. But unfortunately, I also became a bit bewildered because I saw that we had all these people that were working very hard. Every corner of the continent that I went to, we were working very hard, trying to make a living. And in my geography class, I was told that Africa has all these minerals. We have gold, we have diamonds, we have oil, some of the world's greatest stores of minerals. So I couldn't reconcile these two things. Why are we poor if we have people that are working so hard and all these minerals that we have in the ground? I just couldn't understand it. Around the age of 11, I got my answer about why we were poor. We were living in Botswana at the time, in a small town called Selibipikwe. How many of you are from Botswana in this audience? We've got a couple of Botswana. It's a tiny country. I'm not surprised there are a few Botswana here. And this town, Selibipikwe, has 80,000 people, but it's the third largest town in Botswana. The livelihood of Selibipikwe comes from a copper mine. They mine copper and nickel. And so every year, when you get to grade 6, you get a chance to go and visit the mine to understand what drives this town. So we went to visit BCL, that's the name of the mine, put on our little hard hats, went down a lift down into the depths of the shaft to see how this copper was mined out of the ground and everything. Then as we toured around the mine later on, I saw the piles of ore. And I said, so what happens to this ore that we have here? And they explained to me, we ship it to Norway. I said, and then what happens after that? So we bring it back to Africa and we sell it to our neighbors for 20 times the price. Or it's sold to our neighbors for 20 times the price. So it gets exported to Zimbabwe and other countries that need to make copper cables. And so I realized what was going wrong. We, instead of focusing on digging up the minerals from the ground all this time, should have been focusing on developing the expertise to actually convert those minerals into the refined ore so that we could get that 20 times the income. We've been focusing on development the wrong way. It's not about, our wealth doesn't lie under the ground. Our greatest resource has always been above ground. It's our people. It's our brains. It's all of you right here. And so I really then realized that unless we focus on developing our human capacity, we will never get anywhere as a continent. And we need to forget about those minerals that we have under the ground and focus on developing our intellect and our people. So that really has been driving me as I think about my passion. And when we look at this year's theme of inclusive growth, we're talking about growth that benefits all people, not just the elite few. In my mind, the single most powerful way that we can create such inclusive growth is by investing in education and by developing the minds of our billion people so that they can become innovators and entrepreneurs. And people are going to take the resource that we have and create world-leading products that we can sell to the rest of the world. So 10 years ago, a few colleagues of mine, my friend Achaleke over there, there's a gentleman called Christopher Bradford, another one called Peter Momba. We got together and we said, let's stop talking about this. And let's actually create an institution that's going to find the most promising African entrepreneurs, innovators, future scientists, future presidents of countries, future CEOs, who are going to really transform the continent and allow us to really achieve some of our potential. So we launched the African Leadership Academy with a vision to develop the next generation of African leaders. We set ourselves a goal that we were going to develop 6,000 leaders for Africa over a 50-year period. It's been a really rewarding experience for the last 10 years. As I look around the room, many of our We've had 20,000 applications to the Academy over the last 7 years. And so far, we have 634 that are under development. And about 25 of them are here today, who are attending universities in the US, and some of them have already started working. So where are the ALA students in the room? I'm very, very proud of these young people, and if you haven't had a chance to meet them, hopefully over the next few hours that we're still here at Harvard, I hope you get a chance to meet them, and you'll see that these people are really poised to help transform the continent. They are the ones who are going to build the enterprises that are going to create some of the jobs that we need on the continent, right? To help to drive some of this inclusive growth that we're talking about. Now, about 3 years ago, I was just reflecting on what we had built with the African Leadership Academy and where we had come so far. And as I mentioned, it's a real great source of pride to see the young people that are coming out of the academy and what they're doing for the continent already. And so I started thinking about, okay, so what next? What do we do? And 3 questions came to my mind. The first question is, we've been getting about 3,000 to 4,000 applicants a year to this academy. But we could only take about 100 students every year. And so there was real hunger for what we're offering. And I thought, how do we give access to more people? The second question that came to mind was, most of the graduates that would come to our program, it's a 2-year program in South Africa, we'd give them world-class education, and we'd train them in entrepreneurship and leadership, and we'd get to build bonds with other future leaders from all across the continent. After we educated them for 2 years, 80% of them would leave Africa and come and study in the US. Like many of you here, right? And like myself, had to leave Africa to come and study here. And so I started thinking, why do we have to leave Africa to go and study? Why don't we have world-class universities on the continent that are on par with Harvard and Yale and Stanford and MIT and Princeton and Oxford? Why don't we have our own institutions that we can be proud of? That we can turn away students from the West who want visas to come and study. And then the third thing that was in my mind was, I had seen the impact that these 634 young leaders were having on the continent. And I thought, imagine what they're doing. Imagine if you could create thousands more people like them who could actually magnify the impact and create a whole wave of leadership that can really transform the continent. And so, as I thought about these 3 questions more, I started dreaming of building a network of universities. And the vision I had was, I said, what if we could build something like an African Ivy League, where we would select amazing people from all across the continent who had the potential to really be transformative. And I thought, what if we build 25 of these universities and have 10,000 students in each? So that would be 250,000 students that would be educated at any given time. And instead of when we set out initially with the academy, we were thinking about developing 6,000 leaders for Africa. If we could get this system off the ground, we would end up creating 3 million leaders for Africa over the same time period. So that was the dream that I had. But the more I thought about it, I said, you know what, this is impossible. There's no way we can do this. We don't have thousands of PhDs in Africa that we can use as the professors. We don't have the resources, billions of dollars that we're going to need to build these universities. So you know what, it's just a dream. Forget about it. There's no way you can make this happen. But this kept nagging at me that how do we give access to more people? How do we scale up what we're doing with the African Leadership Academy? And so I thought perhaps maybe I'm thinking about this the wrong way. What if we started thinking a bit out of the box and think about other ways, instead of just trying to replicate what we see in the rest of the continent, in other parts of the world? What if we thought about a new and maybe even better model? Because this was the same problem that we faced in the late 90s when we thought about the phones that we had in Africa. We had something like, 400,000 phone lines on the continent for a population of 800 million people. And we weren't going anywhere, we weren't getting communications done. And then suddenly the mobile phone revolution came, and we were able to leapfrog the rest of the world. And all the advances in mobile technology have come from Africa. It's such a pain when I come here and I try and get a pay-as-you-go SIM card. You land in Lagos, you land in Uganda, wherever you go, and 5 minutes later you're online. You just buy a SIM card. All this innovation that we have in the continent, right? That you just can't do here. And so I thought, what if you apply that same mindset? Because I think that, sometimes it's actually great to be starting last. Because you can think out of the box and reinvent new models. And so that's really where I started going forward. Now, question time. Who here can tell me when the first university was invented? Quick. Sorry, please, there are microphones here. We have microphones here. I thought I was in a room full of intelligent Africans.
The first university was founded in 859.
Sorry?
859.
859?
In Morocco.
In Morocco?
Yeah.
Close. Other thoughts?
Oh, this is all. I think it was the University of Cairo, or it's somewhere in Egypt, and I would say 1700. I don't know when exactly.
No. One more option. Come on. Guys. Have you guys heard of Wikipedia? Anyway, it turns out, according to Wikipedia, that... Okay, sorry. The first university that people recognize as the first modern university is the University of Bologna. You said that? Yes. She said... Now... So she says, University of Bologna, and then her hometown, Heidelberg, which is in Germany, and then Oxford. Right? Now, it was invented in the year 1088. So that's about 1,000 years ago. Right? Now, a lot has changed in the world in 1,000 years. But if you look back at how many of the universities exist today, especially the most prestigious ones, they haven't changed. The world we've been through the Industrial Revolution, we've been through the Renaissance period, we've been through the First World War, Second World War, we've been through the Information period. But many universities today look very much like they did in the 15th century, in the 16th century, in the 14th century. One of the things that I think you'll find very characteristic in most universities is the way that teaching and learning happens, right? So question number 2. Now this question goes to people who have graduated from university already. So those of you who are students, you cannot answer this question. And it must go also to people who graduated and you've sort of got 3 to 5, at least 3 years ago. So not you just recently graduated, you graduated at least 3 years ago. Okay, now, the question I want to ask you is this. Think back to the time that you spent in university. Think back. reflect on your 4 years that you were there. I want you to think back to how many of your professors were truly brilliant teachers. Think back. And I want a couple of people to answer this question. And all I want to know is your name, the school you went to, and how many. I don't want to know what they taught and whatever. I just want to know how many. Now, any volunteers answer these questions? I also want to know the year, how many years you've been out of college. Folks, any volunteers?
I went to Duke University 2007. One brilliant teacher, two close.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other answers?
Yeah, sorry. I have 7 years of education so far. Only one brilliant teacher. He taught me managerial leadership and made me feel like I wasted the rest of the money I spent in college, basically.
So I've asked this question to many, many adults. The answer has never been more than 3. And if I look back on my own experience, I went to Macalester College in Minnesota. It was a great, wonderful 4 years of my life. But if I look back on the time there and think about the faculty, the teachers that I had, my microeconomics teacher was fantastic. My macroeconomics teacher, so I remember sleeping through most of his classes. And then I won't comment on the rest. But I had maybe 30 or 40 faculty over the 4 years that I was there. Maybe 3 were brilliant. I did my MBA at Stanford 10 years ago. Same thing. 30 professors over 2 years. But maybe only 2 were really brilliant. Why? What are faculty at universities hired for? Research, right? They're hired not because of their teaching, but they're hired because they're supposed to be there to do research. And so today, you find that most faculty actually do teaching almost as a punishment. Right? And so, as I thought about building this university, so why do we want to borrow this broken model? We don't have any professors who are on tenure who are going to stop any different model. Now, we did an experiment at the African Leadership Academy that showed me what was possible. We were teaching a computer science class, and the teacher that we had wasn't necessarily the best. And at African Leadership Academy, all our teachers are brilliant, except for this guy. So we decided that we were going to stop this computer science class, because we said, it's not our standards. The following semester, we open our doors, and a group of students come to us and they say, we still want to do computer science. We said, well, what do you want us to do? We don't have a teacher anymore. So they kept pushing. So we said, okay, fine, we'll do an experiment. We'll have you guys take an online class. And the class is called How to Build a Search Engine. But we said, the way you take the class, we don't believe that online education alone works as well as it could. So you're not going to sit in your room by yourselves and take this course by yourselves. You're going to show up in class in a regular schedule like everyone else, like you've been doing, and you're going to take it together. So these students would get together 3 times a week. They'd watch the lectures. It was a brilliant professor from University of Virginia explaining how to build a search engine. When they get to a point where they're confused, they'll pause the lecture. The ones who get what's going on will explain to the ones who don't. And then they went on. And suddenly, these kids found out because they had to explain the concept to someone else, when you have to teach something to someone else, you learn it much better yourself. So within a few weeks, these kids were learning how to code. And there was no teacher. So 6 months into the school, I'm sitting with a young woman. Her name is Zineb Umaki. from Morocco. And I said, Zina, what are your favorite classes at ALA this term? I didn't know what she was taking. She says, my computer science class. I said, how is that possible? There's no teacher in that class. She says, I'm learning more from that class and enjoying it more than any of my other classes at ALA. I said, how did you rate the class with the teacher last year? She says, 6 out of 10. How did you rate the class this year without the teacher? 9.5 out of 10. This girl graduated from ALA, and she went to Stanford to do computer science. She's a sophomore at Stanford now doing computer science, and this is how she learned computer science. This is how she got a foundation. The rest of the students in that class went to all these top universities, and they're doing computer science today. So that blew my mind. We were able to offer a better class at zero cost. Without a teacher. So, imagine building a university system. Because if you think about trying to replicate a university system which has faculty with PhDs who are not necessarily great teachers, that you're trying to mold after what has been happening in the rest of the world, we will never get there. We don't have the time to create all these PhDs. We don't have the money to develop them. So if you flip the thing and say, instead of building a university system that is around a resource that we don't have, the limiting resource, what if you look for a resource that we have in abundance? And what we do have in abundance in Africa is brilliant students. So if you build the whole university system around the students themselves and give them a chance to learn, so you get the best content from different... You find those 2 or 3 professors on every university campus, and you collaborate with just those 2 or 3, and you bring them together in one place using technology. And then you supplement that with a lot of peer-to-peer learning. And then, yes, you can still have some facilitators on the ground to fill in the gaps that you're not learning online or that you're not learning from your peers. But the people that you have are not necessarily PhDs. You have people, they're either retired executives who really understand that area, maybe mid-career professional, or maybe even a recent college graduate. But you're selecting them because they're passionate about that subject area and because they're great teachers, not great researchers. And then you put them in the classroom to fill in the gaps that the students haven't learned online and from each other. So that's the model that we started thinking about. Now, the second thing we realized is that most universities today force you to take all the curriculum and content from that university, whether it's good or bad. Right? And so we thought, in this world today where information is so widely available, why don't we go around the world and curate the world's best knowledge and bring it together in one place? So one of the things we plan to do with this university is, in a few months, next year, we plan to launch an MBA program. But the way this MBA will work, right now, to do an MBA at one of the top 5 universities in the US, who can tell me how much it costs? How much is the full cost of doing an MBA today? 200 grand. Yeah. So it's right. It's about $200,000 is the cost to go to Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, etc. to get one of these top university MBA programs, right? Now, that number excludes the cost of your lost income for those 2 years. So if you add the opportunity cost, those of you who study economics will know that concept of opportunity costs. That, depending on how much you were making before. If you were a non-profit guy like me before, you would have maybe not made. But if you were an investment banker or something like that, you could have been making $150,000 a year for 2 years. And so you add that $300,000 plus the $200,000 you're spending. And now it's cost you between $400,000 to $500,000 to get an MBA. Do you realize that's how much you guys are spending on an MBA? Or is it even more? Wow. So maybe you're living in a lavish apartment or something. That's a huge investment to get an MBA. It's really difficult to justify the return on that investment, right? So one thing we're planning to do is our MBA is going to work as follows. You don't have to quit your job. So we're going to select, starting January next year, we're actually starting this June to start in January, they'll actually start next year. Our selection process, we're going to look for the top emerging, 27 to 35-year-old emerging managers in different countries, in different companies across Africa, also from the non-profit world, from government and so forth. And one of the reasons why people get an MBA is because you want a network, right? So we'll be very selective. You find top people who want to get this thing. And then you bring them together for 1 week initially to meet each other so they can form that network, because that's what people want. Say in Mauritius, right? You spend that week, you kick it off, you get to know each other, you begin your initial training. And then you go back home. And then when you're back home, for the first quarter, we use content from, say, Harvard Business School, right? For the first quarter, the students take some online courses from Harvard Business School. And then together in the cohort that's in Lagos, you work on projects together. And then you meet in groups, and you have work on the weekends. You work on projects. The folks in Tanzania, the folks in Morocco, they're all working together, right? While you're taking these online courses. And then you come back again at the end of the first quarter to Mauritius, and we do some more work in teams. You get to reconnect with your classmates. Then you go back home. And this time, you take courses from Stanford Business School. And we pick the best that Stanford is known for: entrepreneurship, design thinking, etc. You come back again, 1 more week. Then you go home. And then third quarter, you take courses from Wharton Business School. Maybe things that Wharton is good for. Finance, corporate finance, things that they're known for, right? You do 1 more week, and then your final quarter, you do courses from Kellogg in marketing, etc., things that they're known for. So what you do is you pick the best from the different business schools, and then you bring it together in one program. You give them the network, and then the second year of the MBA, you have to apply this knowledge that you've learned in the first year to a project in your company. And then at the end of it, you write a thesis and show how you've actually applied this knowledge to improve your company. Guess how much we're going to charge for this MBA? How much would you pay for this MBA? How much? $5,000. How much? 10,000. 50. We're going to charge $20,000 for this MBA. For the whole thing. For the whole thing. Applications open in June, for those of you who are interested. The third question I want to ask folks. For those of you who have graduated from university and have been working for at least 10 years, how many of you are doing today what you actually studied in college? You are. You are. You are. What did you study in college?
I studied international relations and journalism, and I'm a reporter in international affairs.
Okay. Congratulations. Wonderful.
I'm stubborn.
Lucky you.
Stubborn. Yeah, I'm very lucky. No, I acknowledge I'm extremely lucky. I know that.
Any other folks? Who's actually studying what as a career today? Who's doing what they studied? 10 years later, who's doing exactly what you studied? You must have been working for at least 10 years.
I went to school here, and what I do is study the most innovative enterprises on the social enterprise side. They're kind of like cases. That's what I learned here.
If you ask most people today who are working, and I encourage you to do this on your own time, right? Talk to 100 people and ask them what they're doing today and look at what they actually studied. You'll probably find that maybe 15% of the people are actually doing what they studied in university. I studied economics in my undergraduate degree. And then I did an MBA. I'll be honest with you, I don't remember anything that I studied. I don't remember any of the economics. I don't remember the MBA concepts I learned came in here and they left. This is 10 years ago. Why? Because the world is changing so fast that what you learn today becomes irrelevant in the future. 20 years ago, there were no mobile phones. There was nothing like the internet. No one even dreamed of e-commerce. HIV/AIDS wasn't even a disease that, was ravaging the world. So many things have changed. If you started studying computer science even just 5 years ago, you were learning how to program for a laptop, PCs and so forth. By the time you graduated, the world has moved to mobile and tablets. If you're studying marketing, you're thinking about billboards and TV adverts and everything. By the time you graduate, it's all about digital advertising, Google advertising and so forth, right? So the world is changing so fast that what you learn, the content that you learn in college, is not, unless you're doing something very technical, like maybe medicine or law, engineering, most careers you do not actually, the content that you learn actually is not relevant. What matters much, much more are skills. Skills, like how do I work in teams? How do I communicate? How do I think critically? How do I collaborate with others? How do I lead myself? How do I lead others? Those are the things that endure and can take you through the test of time. The problem today is most universities don't understand this. And they focus only on the content. And they think that that is what really matters more than everything else. And they hope that these skills that you need rub off you by accident. And so we're taking a much, much more deliberate approach to saying, actually, the focus of this university should be on giving you those skills. And making sure that you're absolutely relevant and you can continue. And there are many, many, many things that we're doing in the university to help develop those specific skills, being much, much more explicit that that is what matters. The content is important, but the content is a means to an end. It's not the end. So yes, if you're analyzing that history text and everything, and you're up to 2 a.m. every day, it's important that you do that. But you're going to forget that text. What matters is that you learned how to summarize an article, how to articulate an argument, and those. That's what you'll be using later on when you're in the African Union and you're analyzing a bill and you're trying to read. It's those skills that matter. And so that is one of the things that we're really going to be focusing on this university. The other thing that we realize is broken with traditional universities is the relationship with employers. African universities today, who can tell me what percentage of African graduates, people who have university degrees, are unemployed? What percentage of Africans? 65%. Something like 45% of university graduates in Africa today are unemployed. And what is really a shame is that in many countries, there are hundreds of thousands of job openings looking for graduates. You also have hundreds of thousands of unemployed graduates. But there's a mismatch, right? What employers are looking for is not what the universities have produced. And so we want to completely rethink that. The way most employers hire their talent today is as follows. Someone goes through their life for 22 years of their life. They then graduate from university, and then employer hires you, and they start paying you, let's say, $30,000 a year. We're saying, rethink the way you hire. Hire the person you need 3 years before they start working for you. And so, have them come and spend time with us, and then they spend time with you. And so the way we're structuring our program is that our students will spend 8 months on campus with us every year and 4 months working with an employer. And so by the time they graduate, they already have 1 year work experience with the employer. And within their curriculum as well, while they're on campus, we're actually going to create company-specific curriculum that the students will take as part of their core curriculum. So the first year of this university, no one does their major. You don't get involved in physics or history. You all do the same core curriculum, which is preparing you for certain skills that we think your employer needs before you go for your first rotation with the employer. So you're learning things like data and decisions. How do I analyze data? How do I use it to make decisions? How do I use Microsoft Excel? Don't you wish anyone coming for their first job actually knew how to use Excel? The second class they take is a class called Professional Communications. Most people that are hired today, whether they come from Yale or Princeton or MIT, whatever, they don't know how to write well. Most people do not know how to write and communicate properly for the workforce. Especially young people today, they'll write messages using text message language. And so we make sure that everyone goes through a course where they learn how to write properly, how to put together professional memos, how to put together professional communications and presentations and so forth. The third course that everyone goes through is a course called Projects, where we partner with our corporate partners. We say, give us actual projects that you gave to your entry-level employees that you considered high-performing. Then we give them to our students, and then they work on them in teams. And so the first month you work on a project for Coke. Second month you work on a project for GE. Third month you work on a project for, McKinsey, whatever. And by the time you go for your first set of, for your first rotation with the employer, you've already had real experience working on real corporate projects. You're also going to be taking an entrepreneurial leadership class, which is really the magic of what we've developed at the African Leadership Academy, where they learn how to work in teams, how to lead each other, how to lead projects, and they all have to start a little business on campus and so forth. And then finally, you're taking a course about your employer. So if you're going to be working for Coca-Cola, you'll be taking a course about Coca-Cola, learning about their products and their history and what is their strategy in Africa and so forth. So by the time you show up after 8 months of being on campus, you show up for your first 4-month rotation, you just hit the ground running. You do this every year for 3 years. 8 months on campus with us, 4 months with the employer. By the time they then hire you, after 3 years, this person is like someone who's been with the employer already for 2 years. So much more better prepared for the workforce. Question. What percentage? So traditional universities in the US today are 4 years long, right? In the UK, it's about 3 years long. What percentage of that time do students spend on holiday? If you look at your traditional academic year, the average US college in the States today, what percentage of time do students spend on holiday in a 4-year degree? 25? So we looked at the typical US college, and we added up the amount of holiday periods that students have. We were shocked when we looked at it. The typical US college gives you vacation between 5 to 6 months every year. By the time you add up 3 months of a summer, fall break, December break, J term, spring break, you add up all that. So, McAllister, where I went to, we get about 6 months of holiday every year. We had about 6 months of holiday. So today, if you go to so I got for my bachelor's degree 2 years of education. If you look at a lot of universities today, you pay $240,000 to go to a top U.S. college, $60,000 a year, and you get 2.3 years of education. Oxford University in the UK, or one of these top UK universities, 3 years of education, 6 months of holiday every year. So you pay $180,000 for 1.5 years of education. So in our model, we said, you know what? There's no vacation. Because when you're 17 or 18, you have the most energy in your life. When you graduate and you start working, then you show up for your first day of job and say, sorry, you've got 3 weeks of vacation. That's what they give you. No. Yes, we'll give them the odd long weekend here and there, but we don't have time in Africa to be on vacation. There's too much that we need to get done. So in our model, once you join, you go 3 years straight, 8 months on campus, 4 months with the employer. By the time you graduate, you have 1 year of work experience already, you go into the workforce, and you've had 3 years of a structured learning experience. Now, guess how much all of this will cost a student? We're talking about all our students will live in a world-class campus, fully residential university. They have to live together. So it's not an online program. Full university, so you come and live together in a campus that you spend maybe $100 million on each campus. So it's a beautiful world-class campus, fully residential. And with this learning model that I've talked about, leveraging technology, curating the world's best curriculum, bringing it together in one place, you have 4 months of work experience every year. How much is this experience going to cost? How much? 50,000. 15. So remember, to get this degree in the US today costs you $240,000. How much is this going to cost us in Africa to deliver this? 400,000, 100,000, $21,000 to get this full degree. $21,000, $7,000 a year for both tuition and accommodation per year. It excludes food, however. The final thing I'll talk about is the way you think about traditional universities today have a faculty of engineering, faculty of law, faculty of business, etc., etc., etc. But the world doesn't exist in silos like that. Most problems today that you need to address are very interdisciplinary, right? And so as we're looking at designing this university, I thought, when we actually shouldn't be building faculties of engineering, no. What if we thought about structuring our schools around the 7 greatest challenges that Africa is going to face over the next 50 years and the 4 greatest opportunities that we're going to have? So we've identified 7 grand challenges. One of them is poverty. Another one is education. Another one is infrastructure. and another one is healthcare, right? So you'll have the School of Infrastructure. And in there you'll have, because 800 million people are going to be moving into African cities over the next 40 years. So in that School of Infrastructure, you'll do urban planning. You'll talk about urban policy making. How do you use technology to build smart cities? How do you think about providing water, electricity, etc. into all these urban areas, and create this interdisciplinary approach to addressing this challenge? In the School of Poverty, that's where you learn about entrepreneurship. That's when you'll do, maybe we need a better name for that one. In the healthcare school, that's when you'll have medicine, you'll have healthcare policy, you'll think about public health, and you put all this thing together, because all of these things need to come together to solve our problems. So there are many, many, many more innovations that we're thinking about. But in closing, what I want to say is this. We're talking here about inclusive growth and why we need this in Africa. Now, for me, inclusive growth is not about statistics. It's about how do we change the lives of everyday people in Africa to make sure that our people have access to health care and education and water and a house and a roof over their heads and food. Things that they need to improve their daily lives. And so as we go about thinking about inclusive growth and creating all these opportunities and providing these services and needs for our people in Africa, there's a great temptation for us to just simply borrow and copy and paste ideas from the rest of the world and bring it to Africa. And I'm saying that sometimes it's good to start last. Because what we have in Africa is we don't have the legacy. Because all these things I'm talking about doing, for example, with this university, traditional universities in the West can't do that. Because they have hundreds of years of legacy. They have faculty who are on tenure who are going to stop this process. You have alumni who are going to say, no, that's not the way it was when I went there, so you can't do that, or I'm not going to donate. And there's all these forces that are going to make it harder to do here. Just like when the mobile phone was invented and you had all this legacy of landlines in these countries, and it took them so long. We don't have legacy in Africa. So as we think about solutions to all these challenges we have, my challenge to all of you is to resist the temptation to simply copy and paste ideas from the rest of the world. We have an opportunity to build newer and better models and to implement them in Africa. And so in closing, what I want you to think about is that sometimes, just sometimes, it's great to be an African. Thank you. Thank you. Do we have time for questions? Okay, we have time for a couple of questions. So, we'll take a couple of questions. There are mics over there. We have time for a couple of questions.
Hi, my name is... Okay. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Michael from Nigeria. My question to you is, I like the vision, I like the model, and it's very innovative. Now, the question I have is, how do you incentivize those that you've educated to stay and invest in the continent? Because it sounds like you're creating a new generation of future leaders, but their set of skill sets are going to be required in the West and in Africa. And it sounds like they will get paid better and have a better environment in the West than they would in like Africa, for example. So how do you incentivize them to stay and invest in the continent?
Sure. So one of I believe that, if you just educate people and you don't educate them with a purpose, then I think you're missing the point. So for me, how do we keep these talents in Africa? The first is you have to unite them around a common mission and a purpose. So for me, education, if you do it well, it should have a very clear purpose. So we want them to understand that they are part of a special generation of people who are going to really help to move Africa forward. The second thing that we do is we infuse entrepreneurial thinking into the whole program. So no matter what your major is going to be, you still have to go through and be infused with this passion and understand what it means to be an entrepreneur. Because I believe that if you're an entrepreneur, Africa is your paradise. If you think like an entrepreneur, you don't want to leave Africa. Because there's so many opportunities and nothing has been done, or very little has been done, that you can be the first to do so many things in Africa. So if you make all these young people think like entrepreneurs, my vision is that 50% of these people who come out of these universities will become entrepreneurs. And the other half will get jobs and so forth and so forth. The final thing I'll say is that, you know what? Because of the scale of this thing, I don't mind if we lose 20, 30% of them to go and work outside. Because when you're creating 3 million people, you can afford to lose a few of them. And in fact, I expect that because of the aging population in the rest of the world, Africa's population, we're 18, the average age of an African is 18. The average age of a Japanese is 45. The average age of a German is 44, something like that, right? So the world's great companies, if they're smart, are going to partner with us to say, this is a source of my future talent. And they'll pay us to train their future workforce for them to work in Germany and Japan and all these things. And we will then be able to leverage some of that to train many more Africans who will stay on the continent. So that's the way I think about it. You can afford a brain drain when you're producing so many that it doesn't matter if a few of them leave. Right now, we're not producing enough. So those few thousand that leave really hurt us. But this will allow us to actually survive.
How are you going to avoid going through the traditional approach of teaching fundamental and applied sciences like mathematics and physics?
So actually, those are the areas where it's probably the easiest to actually apply this model. Because where there's a right or wrong answer, like in physics and math and so forth, this model that I'm talking about works most easily. Because it's the way you can leverage technology to actually quiz people and see what they're understanding and so forth, and the peer learning works very well. And so that model works very well. It's actually trickier when you're trying to teach things which require more judgment, like, English or history and philosophy and so forth. But in terms of math and science, this model works beautifully.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. Actually, a comment. You gave examples of companies where your students are going to work, like Coca-Cola, McKinsey, and so on. But I also feel that you should include indigenous companies like Dangote, EcoBank, because truly we need those large organizations that are indigenous to Africa to really develop Africa.
I agree with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fred, for that amazing speech. Pleasure having you here. So good to see you. Good to see you, Lisa. All right, guys, quick announcement before we head out. There's a lost and found in Spangler, so if you've lost anything or found anything, please stop by registration to give it in or pick it up.